What's up, guys? I'm out here in the garage again. Truth be told, I made a video last week and I just wasn't really happy with how it came out. I started doing the wiring on the Triumph and realized that I didn't like the way some of the controls I already had were laid out, so I had to order new ones, and basically it was a 10-minute video where I really didn't accomplish much. So instead of putting that out, I decided to just kind of take some of those clips and use them for this week's video. So sorry it's been a few weeks since I've put a video out, but that's the reason. I need to get the car out of the way, and I realized I haven't actually shown my car on the channel yet. And my thought process behind that was I didn't want to introduce another project and you guys think that I gave up on the Triumph or stopped and I'm not going to finish it or something like that. So I was going to wait until this project was totally done before I even showed the car. But now I'm realizing that the car is kind of in the background on some other videos, and I'm just going to show you guys what it is. I won't go into super detail in this video about it, but I'll show you what the car is. That way, if it's in the background, I don't have to worry about trying to edit it out or anything. And I can post up a couple pictures on Instagram and start to build excitement for this project. I'm not officially going to start on the car until the bike is done, so don't worry. Triumph is still main priority. So that being said, let's go ahead and reveal this car and get it out. Well, there she is. It's a 69 Camaro, if you're not familiar with muscle cars. I've had it for a couple of weeks. I bought it up in Dallas, and it was one of those things that it's one of my bucket list cars. It's actually the bucket list car for me, and I just kind of decided it was time to make it happen. So I've been looking for a couple of months, and I almost found one and went and got it out in West Texas, and it kind of fell through the cracks, and this one kind of popped up, and I just put these wheels on it yesterday. So I'll throw a picture up now of when I was bringing it home, or when I had it in the driveway. It had these blue wheels, steel wheels with dog dish hubcaps on it, which were cool for the time, but not quite my style. So I actually ordered these wheels 6 weeks ago, and I've been waiting for them to come in. So this is it. This will be the long-term classic octane project in the way of classic cars. So still got a lot of work to do. It looks like it's done, but I mean, we still got drum brakes, stock suspension, non-existent interior, as you can see. So I have a whole brand new interior on the way, and again, I'm not going to bore you guys with a bunch of details on this video, but have a whole interior on the way. I got boxes full of brand new seats and harnesses and all kinds of stuff. So this will be the long-term car project. So there you go. The cat's out of the bag now. 69 Camaro in the garage, and it's going to be a big part of the channel going forward. So let's get back to work on the Triumph. Bring you guys back up to speed on where we are with the bike. So I have this battery box in the back right here that I had to trim down. So I cut about a 1/2 inch or so off of this so that it's a little bit shallower, because all I needed to do is fit this anti-gravity battery. So what I did Just basically put it in there. It's got maybe 1/8 of an inch or so before the edge, and then the top goes right over here and holds the battery nice and tight. Can't go sideways, can't go forward and backwards. And once we have our wires kind of in here and out of the side, which you see I've drilled a hole and I have little rubber grommets, so the positive cable will come out one side, negative out the other side. We can also put in probably like a little piece of foam or something like that to keep this from sliding up, because we obviously don't want the two terminals contacting this metal plate and shorting out. The two holes on the top are for mounting. So how I'm going to mount it is I'm going to use the two bolts on the top here that were for the handlebar risers, that obviously now with clip-ons we don't need. So it'll sit in here like that. These bolts, here's an example of one right here, will slide through, out, and I need to get longer ones, and then into these top holes. And we can have a nut on the top and a nut on the bottom so that we can kind of have some adjustability on exactly where this sits. But the idea is that this will be painted black and it'll kind of disappear in here. So it won't interfere with anything as you turn, because it'll be kind of rigid right behind the headlight there and hold the battery. So what I started last week and then realized wasn't going to work, or that I wasn't happy with, were these factory controls. So these are the ones that came, okay, when I say factory, I mean the ones that came on the bike itself when I bought it. So these are just like a cheap plastic kind of aftermarket universal switch, where they have like turn signals on the bottom, headlight, horn, and then a kill switch, which this whole thing is just made out of plastic. And I was gonna use it and I was like, you know what, it'll probably be fine. And then the more I got to looking at it, I was like, man, this is like a classic bike. There's basically nothing plastic on this whole thing. I don't want these like big bulky plastic controls. And then I picked these up off Amazon. They are black anodized aluminum with momentary switches in them. These are like a typical switch where it's open, you press it, and then it closes the circuit, which is a lot easier for me to wire up into the M-Unit. So I have two of them because this is all of the switches I need. So these switches will live right there basically. I'll have to scoot the clutch lever in just a little bit, but picture them kind of right there. Then I can wire in the top left will be left turn signal, top right will be right turn signal, bottom left will be horn, and bottom right can actually control high beam and low beam. So the beauty of the M-Unit is you can program all of that stuff. So you can have a one button headlight and it just picks up when the button's switched. I'm not sure yet if it's like I hit it once and the high beam's on and then once again in the low beam, or if it's like hit it once for the low beam and then double tap for a high beam. I don't know exactly. I haven't looked into the programming yet, but I know that you can run it off of one switch. So that's all I'm going to have for controls, electric controls at least on these handlebars, is just those 4 clean switches. And that'll be really, really nice. And then since my ignition key is right on the top of the headlight, I can just use that as my kill switch. Because, if you remember from my old CB550 videos, I put a kill switch in under the seat and it totally didn't work because I couldn't have the clutch pulled and hit the kill switch at the same time, like if I'm pulling up into a parking space. This way I can still have the clutch pulled with my left hand. Once I stop, reach over to my right hand, turn the key, kill the bike, and be good to go. So that was a long-winded explanation of where we are now, but basically at this point what I need to do is start to just pull a lot of this out. I'm gonna basically pull all of it out because with the new switches and everything, there really isn't anything I can use in here anymore. So we're gonna go ahead and get to doing that and just pulling stuff apart, and I'll kind of label stuff as needed, but really the name of the game is clear this part out and see what kind of room we have to work with for the M-Unit, and also I believe the electronic ignition box is gonna fit into this headlight as well. Well, this is what the point of no return looks like. Kinda went a little ham with the wire cutters and just cut out everything, and I'm gonna just start from scratch. So here's kind of basically what we're looking at. Ignition switch, A bunch of wires off of the ignition switch. Not 100% what they do. I can kind of look at the switch and see that one terminal is not even used, and then we have kind of off and the on position. So I can use a multimeter and kind of dive into these and how many of them we actually need. Really all I need the ignition switch to do is power up the M-Unit itself. Let me kind of show you this little wiring diagram I made for myself. So I made this before I decided to go with those new switches. So this isn't 100% accurate, but basically what you're looking at here, M-Unit in the middle, we got battery through a main fuse, we got our ignition, which is what turns the main battery power onto this lock portion of the M-Unit. That's what actually turns it on. So this is just kind of like the main power for, you know, the bank of where it needs to send power to, and this is what actually powers on the unit and says, hey, the bike's on and ready to start to fire some of this stuff up. Then we have, you know, we have a brake switch, which is going to be on the front brake. I'm honestly not going to run one on the rear brake for two reasons. One is it's going to be ugly and I don't want to look at it, and two is it's going to be ugly and I don't want to look at it. So we're just going to run the front brake, which not just the front brake, but the front brake switch, because I'm always going to be using the front brake if I'm using the back brake, pretty much. I can't imagine a scenario where I'm just going to be using the rear brake. So the brake light will just be operated off of the front brake lever. Oil switch for obviously low oil pressure. This bike actually doesn't have a neutral light, which I didn't realize. So our three indicators on the top are going to be for turn signals being on, you know, the flashy yellow for when your turn signals are on, when oil light for if we have low oil pressure, and then high beam indicator for obvious reasons. So these will be the four switches I talked about earlier. Headlight signals, these are the indicator lights in the top of the headlight. My new electronic ignition, not new to the bike, but new, you know, it's not original, it is an upgraded aftermarket ignition. Coil, brake light, rear signals, regulator, rectifier, you know, stator, horn, all of that stuff. So every component on the bike is laid out on here, just so I can get a good idea of where stuff should be wired up. And again, since we are switching from a positive earth, like on a standard classic Triumph, to a more traditional, you know, commonly found on bikes now, negative earth system, basically had to throw out the stock wiring diagram and run with this one. So now what I'm going to do is start to kind of clean up some of these random electrical taped wires and actually start to get the components into where, you know, the general place where they're supposed to be, so we can start to kind of route out some of our wires and you know, get us on the way. So all right, I went ahead and wired up I just used my old LED strip here so that I can kind of test brake lights and stuff too. This one I just went with left turn signal. So basically all I did was one side of the switch goes to ground, the other side of the switch goes to left turn signal, then out of this turn signal goes to the light, and then the light of course is grounded as well. So we turn the ignition key, come on, one-handed, boom, M-Unit fires up. Now theoretically this will be mounted on the handlebar, tap my button, got ourselves a left turn signal switch. Boom. So I can you know, wire my indicator up to that as well, so the indicator will also be flashing. The beauty of the M-Unit as well is I can actually program what type of flash it is. So this taillight automatically flashes quickly, but you can, you know, if it's just a normal kind of bulb, you can have it kind of go in and fade out. You can have it flash quickly like this. You can have it just go standard on, off, on, off. I'll probably go with a nice fade in and out. Doesn't really matter. It's just kind of a cool thing that you can do. And then turn it off. I just click the button one more time. Boom. Now it's off. On, off. So it'll be the exact same scenario for, you know, the horn. And I mean, obviously the horn won't stay on until you hit the button again. The horn will just be momentary. That's what's again, the beauty of the M-Unit is all that stuff's programmed in already. So this is all making a lot of sense to me. So I think I'm ready to kind of tear this apart and actually start to get some of the wires in place on the bike. All right, I switched to overhead view, which you longtime subscribers will recognize from some of my older videos. So I wanted to test out one more function on the M-Unit before I actually put it back in the bike, and that is the one-wire tail light, and also double checking my one button to control high and low beam. So I have, let's see, the LED is set up, the tail light and the brake light wires are connected as, as one wire running into the M-Unit on the brake terminal. Then I have this red button here set up as my headlight switch. So in theory, I turn the key on, I hit this button, my high beam should turn on, which I have wired up here, and the tail light. I hit the button again, then the little LED for the high beam indicator, which I don't have wired up, should switch over. So that every time I hit that button, it'll switch between high and low beam. But if I click and hold it down, it should turn off the headlight and the tail light. Again, another function of that is when I hit my little switch here, this is set up as my brake switch right now, we should easily be able to see it go between tail light and brake light. So let's give it a shot. Turn ignition on. Okay. I want to turn on my headlight. Boom. Headlight, tail light. Let's check the brake. I go to hit the brake. Boom. Got brake light. Okay, now I hit my button again on the handlebar. Ah, okay. Now I get it. So I can tap it quickly, and if you can kind of see this little LED turns on here. So that's if I wanted to like flash the high beams. I can just tap it real quick and that'll flash the high beam. So if I'm going to like pass or whatever, that's cool. If I hold it all the way down for a little bit longer, now it switches. Now the high beam would be on if I had one wired up. See, my taillight's still on. If I want to switch back to low beam, click a long click again. That's really cool. I didn't realize it had that kind of flash to pass feature. And if I want to turn it off, I just click and hold it down. Boom. Taillight and headlight are off. Man, this thing is sweet. Brake light still works. All right. Well, that's exactly what I wanted to test, and that is pretty freaking awesome. So I'm not going to get into detail on how to reprogram this thing, but to give you the 2-second version, basically you ground this little configure terminal here. So you just like wire up a switch to ground, and you can go through the menus, and you can change all of the stuff I'm talking about one wire tail light, how long your turn signals go on, the alarm functionality, all of that stuff. So that's one thing I just wanted to test on that. So cool. Now that works, we can actually start to put all this craziness in the bike. What I'm doing now is going through and finding all of these kind of connections that are just like these Home Depot crimp connections and random things that are behind, like this. These kind of cheap connectors. I'm going to spend some time and just go through, cut all of those out, heat shrink, and proper motorcycle bullet connection, quality piece them together, because I don't want crappy Home Depot connections and 3 pounds of electrical tape and stuff to live on this bike. I want it to be done right, and I want it to be done with the highest quality parts I can get. Again, this is my bike that I've kind of always wanted to build for myself, and I don't want to cut corners, and even if it takes a little bit longer, I want to do it the right way. So I'm going to kind of go through here, and anything that's a connection like that, I will solder, heat shrink, make look really professional. Anything that needs to be able to connect and disconnect, I'll put the higher quality, proper crimp style bullet connectors on those. So that'll be really boring to watch, so I'm just going to go ahead and knock it out, and then I'll bring you guys back when we're moving on to the next thing. So this is where the main components will be mounted inside the headlight. So I'm obviously going to make a more permanent bracket than this. I'll probably do a little bracket off of this headlight mount onto this mounting hole right here. and then the electronic ignition box will be on that side. I did check, and the headlight does have plenty of room to kind of come in here still. I'm also going to use one of these, and the thought process behind this is I have a ton of things in here that need switched power and basically a bunch of things that need to be grounded. And instead of running a whole bunch of wires to the M-Unit itself, I'm going to run one wire from the auxiliary into the power side of this. Then I'll all of a sudden have, 4 connections that I can use to, send power to things. And the same with the ground side. I'll have a nice solid ground from, where I run the battery to one of these posts. I'll also run a grounding cable to the negative side of this, and then have a whole bunch of places to ground things like the front turn signals and the indicator lights and stuff like that. That's not a huge amp draw or anything crazy. It just all needs to be grounded. So I'm going to use this little block to kind of help organize that. I missed my Distinguished Gentleman's Ride deadline that I really wanted to hit by quite a lot. I just have a ton of stuff going on with work and a ton of travel, and just unfortunately didn't make it. So I really would love to make it to the Harvest Classic, which is coming up here in a couple of weeks, late October here in Austin. I'd really love to hit that. Worst case scenario, the twist off is in early November. I think it's the 3rd and 4th of November, which is basically exactly a month from now, and this bike has to be done by then. I've already bought my rider's ticket, which means I plan on racing this thing at the twist off. So I'm gonna have to pull all-nighters and whatever I got to do to get it done. I really think it's possible. All I have to do is finish the wiring. I say all I have to do, finish the wiring. Then, if you remember, I got to blow the whole bike back apart, which really isn't that big of a deal, and finish weld. And I mean, that's a day's worth of work right there. Then paint, and then put it all back together. So, I mean, I would say I probably have 4 or 5 solid days of work left. But if I start, putting in some later nights during the week when I get home from work, and then of course a couple of more weekends, I don't see any reason why I can't get it done by then. So to kind of show you guys what I'm thinking for the rear turn signal, I have these little bullet signals that came with the bike, and what I did is I trimmed it down, and I'm using it as the mount for the rear fender. So it's a solid metal screw that the wire goes through, and then I have this little, the part for the rear fender, and then enough thread still sticking out for the bolt to get on. So it'll kind of sandwich it all together, and I'll actually use the signal as the bolt for the rear light, which should be nice and clean. I wanted to show you guys this too. I am making my own custom tail light out of, this was a bell I found at a thrift store, and then I've got some brass fittings on the back, and the reason behind that is because those fittings are hollow, so the wire can actually run through the fitting itself. Originally I was thinking about mounting it up here, basically like right there. See if it'll stay, but I feel like it sticks up too much, and it, like, I don't know, it draws your eye away. But I mean, it would be the most visible spot. I'm not going to mount it today, so let me know what you guys think. Does this tail light right here look good on the fender? Let me give you the full view. My gut says, like, that line sweeps so nicely right now, and that just kind of breaks it up. So I personally am not sold, but it may just, need to grow on me. So let me know what you guys think. Second option would be kind of somewhere down around this area or on this side. I'd probably put it on the right side of the bike just because all the chain and every brake and everything's on this side, so it's a little heavier looking on this side than it is on this side. So I'm thinking about the license plate going on this side, and then this mounting as well. So I got to figure out, the license plate's probably going to be down a little lower. So I don't know, I can kind of figure that out. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this week's video. We got a lot done. It might not look like it, but most of it was planning and kind of figuring out how the M-Unit works and how everything's going to be wired up. So I'm pretty confident about being able to knock the rest of it out pretty quickly. It'll be a part 2 to this video, if not a part 3, but I think I'll be able to knock it out in 2 parts. You know, we can kind of see how everything's mounted, how all the lights are going to be laid out, the switches are going to be laid out. So now we can actually start to go in and run each wire and figure out the routing and what we want to heat shrink together and kind of hide and all of that. So all the planning stuff is pretty much done. It's just a matter of actually starting to cut wires and put them in you know, the proper places. So the goal next time is to get it to the point all the way where all of the lights work, you know, the ignition works, the indicators all work. I have spark. I'm not going to try to fire the bike just because we don't have the motor mounts totally done. I still have to kind of put the right spacers and everything in there. So the motor's kind of in the right spot, but it's just not solidly mounted enough to actually fire the bike up. But once I get to the point all the way to where I have spark, then I'm confident I can tear the bike apart, paint everything, finish weld everything, put it all back together, fire it up, and finally go have some fun with it. So yeah, I'm gonna get to work on that stuff here in the next couple of days, and I'll have another video out soon on that. Let me know what you guys think about that rear light and how I should mount it. Let me know what you think about the new car. I know it's probably a surprise to a lot of people, but I hope you guys like it. It is going to be a really big part of the channel going forward. Once the Triumph is done and riding and we can enjoy that, we can shift our focus onto the Camaro and start to do a lot of really awesome things with that. Again, I'll put out a more kind of in-depth project overview of that in a couple of weeks. Yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, check out my website. I do still have some shirts and stickers on there. I am going to be coming out with a new shirt or 2. I want a shirt with a Camaro on it, and then I think it's time for a redesign for some of my other shirts. So go and check those out. And yeah, follow along on Instagram for some kind of behind the scenes stuff, and we'll see you guys next week.